I guess in the end of the day, the it paid off. I mean, this is still a fresh movie. The IMDb score is high. The audience score is high. I
And
mean,
it's interesting. I
mhm.
watched it again and I was interested in the conversations.
When I said that we were covering this on Movies, Films, and Flicks, I got a lot of people going, "Oh yeah, Beautiful Girls, I love that movie." So I think it's good to watch and kind of reevaluate and reappraise. And
And why do we like it so much? That's what I think is healthy. Well, why do we like it then? Why do we like it now? And really evaluate that, because I never really thought about it until now about why I liked it so much. Why did it resonate so much for me in high school?
I think, all right, so let's look at like 96 movies that came out in 96. So this wasn't like an overtly crass movie. I mean, they do have those discussions, but I don't know, if you look at like 1996 was Swingers and like, like, oh, you're so money, and which was fine. But there weren't many movies like this. Like, this is like a diner. This is like uh, one of those movies where it's just a bunch of guys talking and meeting in a diner and talking and these conversations. And so I think these movies were really lacking for us, for kids, teenagers. We watched everything. I bought Natural Born Killers used on VHS. I think I bought Dunstan Checks In and that. But it's
Yeah, I saw Fiction at 13, I think.
yeah. No, I
I
was
saw
12. You were
13.
14.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was too
in the
early to watch Pulp
theater.
Fiction.
And so I mean, we were watching everything at the time. We knew what was going on, but this was kind of a rare because also too, if you think about post '94, you had Pulp Fiction, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, all these hyper stylized movies, and we had we're still getting the big action blockbusters. But like Clerks came out in '94, but that was so much different and caustic than this movie. And then you have this one where it's just conversations, and it's people. I think people do learn a lesson. I do think another interesting thing is Lauren Holly's character in this film, where a lot of these guys that we get to spend time with, they're treated somewhat three dimensionally. They're you get to kind of spend time with them, but I do feel like Darian Smalls, she's just
One
outright
dimensional.
vilified the entire film. Like there's really even at the scene in the library, the scene at the scene of the prom. Uh,
Oh, with the daughters crying when they're trying to talk to each other in the library, that was hard. That
yeah,
was a hard scene. And then they twist the knife when the kid from high school calls her a snake at the party.
yeah.
So they really went after her in this movie.
I feel bad for snakes because I don't think they're that mean. But it's
Oof.
like I just think like you're as mean as a snake and like some black snake hanging out. It's like, oh man, some garden snake. Why?
What'd I do to
Some
you?
boa constrictors just hanging out right now. Like, what's the deal? Yeah, but I think there are certain you can tell this was written by a dude and a guy who can write, but a guy in his 20s, and I just it's interesting how there is a definite power dynamic towards the male side in this film, which
Completely.
which I do think keeps it from. I never thought about that when I was 14, but you look at it now and it doesn't paint like in Rosie O'Donnell, like she's talking about being the feminist, but she's also Rosie O'Donnell. You don't have like Mira Sorvino as that character. Does that
Hmm.
make sense? Like he does paint it quite interestingly in some
Yeah, they had the
ways.
comedian. Rosie
Yeah,
O'Donnell's the comedian playing that role.
doing the bits. And so, listen, people still love it, but I do think there's definite power imbalance to it. That I think if you don't have any good guidance or parents or people looking out for you, you watch this movie, you're like, yeah, this is the normal thing when you're 14, but it's not. So I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think about
I think it
Holly's
goes to say
character?
it's yeah. I mean, it's good. I mean, I think the voices are okay as long as they're counterbalanced in other movies with other voices with different perspectives on similar situations. And Lauren Holly, it was funny. The first impression is when she meets them at 5 o'clock in the morning to get them coffee, and she looked great.
Mm-hmm.
Like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you look great. Like what? Good for you. I remember thinking how strange that whole conversation was with the coffee and the styrofoam mugs. But yeah, I mean, she just supporting player. It was a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have been better served having a little more deeper aspects to that character.
Yeah, like just like do you think I enjoy this too? Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like you think this is fun? Like I don't know. It's just, but I guess they're calling it Beautiful Girls, but then they don't really give that much characterization to a lot of them. Like Uma Thurman's cool, but she's kind of an ideal. Like she has that speech about how she
Right.
loves when her boyfriend says "Good night, baby girl." Like that's just the only
I
four things
googled
I need
that.
to
Oh,
hear.
Goodnight Sweet Girl,
Sweet
but
Girl,
I googled is Goodnight one word or two? I didn't know, so I googled it, and the majority of definitions say 2 words when Goodnight, but it doesn't make sense because goodbye is 1 word, but I guess good morning is 2 words. So I had to Google, like, I was hoping to really get them, like, oh, I got you, writer. It's actually 3 words, but Goodnight is technically 2.
Good night and good luck. I guess if you look at that.
I'm a grammar nerd, so I had to look into that one.
But I guess just that speech, and I mean, but still, I mean, I guess everyone does grow up. You know, the guys do grow up in this movie, and you know, I saw on the poster in the '90s, someone's like the best date movie in years, and I'm like, is it?
Well, I think people didn't know what this one is. I think it was a lot like Office Space, where like you didn't know what Office Space was. Like, I had a question for you. And I was looking up the description. I actually rented this to rewatch it. And the description was an all-star cast sparks this captivating comedy of a group of old friends whose 10-year high school reunion creates some hilariously unexpected surprises. Timothy Hutton, Matt Dillon, Michael Rappaport may have lost a bit of their youth, but they're still ready to party with Uma Thurman, Rosie O'Donnell, Lauren Holly, and Mira Sorvino, the beautiful girls who turn their lives upside down! ! So my question to you, and sorry for that long read, just because, do companies or the marketing teams, do they even care about providing an accurate description, or are they just trying to sell movies 20 years after it's released?
You know, that's a great question, because you look at some of these movies that come out like nowadays, like some of these A24 films I love, like Green Knight. When a marketing department gets their hand on it, they're like, oh man, this is like a movie called Green Knight, and there's really no knighting in it. Like, there's no really violence. Like, how are we going to market this? So, like, we got to get butts in seats. So you can't just say a wildly esoteric romp into surrealist knighthoods. This is like full of like, you know, allegory and metaphors. Like, now you get back, the Green Knight chops the dude's head off, and now he has to go back to him for a year later to walk towards his fate. Like, and along the way, there'll be a lot of perilous stuff. Like, you have to build that. So, I mean, this movie, right? Like, a dude comes home and hangs out with his alcoholic buddies and parents and realizes that they just need to get their stuff right. Like, it's not.
Yeah. So, Mark, this is a perfect lead-in to what we do every podcast. And how would you describe this movie in less than 10 words? I'm sorry, it's a perfect lead-in. I want to hear what you think.
Dude comes home, realizes his life is good. Dude comes home, realizes his life is actually pretty good. There, 10 words.
Oh, that's a good way of looking at the positive. I was thinking of it as, don't put unrealistic photos of models on your walls.
Yeah, exactly. Ideals are not good.
Right.
Especially the 1990s ideals that were shoved down our throats. You know, like everyone getting makeovers and just that whole culture of all of. I mean, maybe nowadays, who knows? But
yeah, it's that longing for something better always.
I mean, it's kind of interesting though. He's just a mope at home. His career's not really going great. Comes home, kicks back, kind of falls back in old trends. He goes through some pretty wild ordeals. He takes a break. Sees Annabeth Gish again. He's like, oh, my life is pretty good. She's a lawyer, and she likes my piano playing, and I have really nothing to complain about. And I've probably not given 100% to my piano playing. Like, has this guy given 100% to his piano playing, Eric?
No, not at all. He plays at tiki bars. The way they introduced him in the beginning, remember when he paid for everything with cash? He was playing in that boozy piano bar. He buys a Greyhound ticket with cash. He's just getting by. He's scraping by week to week.
Just a depressed dude, not giving his all.
Right, just floating around, not knowing what he wants. Because then he was thinking about taking a sales job, too. So he was kind of half 1 foot into the piano playing and 1 foot out.
So it's, yeah. I mean, at the end, I think he's kind of like, man, I'm getting out of here. Things aren't too bad. Maybe, but I mean, he had to go through all that. So that's my thing. But yeah, I like yours better. Don't put idealized photos of models on your walls and expect that of someone when you aren't that. And so how about this? Let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll you have some fun stuff for me, don't you?
I do.
All right, we'll talk more beautiful girls. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks, and I think we're going to have a pretty great, excellent, pretty good. What else was there?
Superb.
Oh,
It was really superb.
that
This
was
will be the
superb
most
second half.
superb out of all superb second halves of a podcast in movies, films, and flicks history.
That's some superb thinking right there. There's a lot of superb in this movie.
Yeah, there was 6 or 7 mentions of like literally. Why was that? Why was that word used so many times?
I think it was 95, 96 maybe when he wrote it. I mean, he wrote this quick. I mean, superb. Like, it's just a very written line. Like, it's just, I don't think I've ever asked somebody, how you doing today? Superb. Or you want to go, how's that pizza? Superb. You want to go roll? Superb. I've never heard that. There are lines that you just hear in movies.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. It's like they're unhappy, they're sad. Both the brother and the dad were sad, and then when they were finally happy, they didn't know how to express their happiness.
Yeah.
So they kept saying the same thing over and over again.
Living the dream. It was a good, David Arquette, man. He's a squirrely little guy, isn't he?
Yeah, the way they introduced him was perfect. He was all hungover. It was noon. He said he had to take a dump. So he ran away.
Very honest.
It was a good role for him.
Yeah, and I like that he wasn't mad at his brother or anything. They just didn't talk. They did not know each other.
Yeah, there's an age gap there, and they just weren't connected.
Yeah, he's maybe 21, maybe
something like that.
So wait, you had something in store for me, right?
I do. So one of my favorite parts about co-hosting on a movies, films, and flicks episode is my questions for Mark section.
Oh.
So I always come with a whole lot of questions for Mark. But first off, so I feel like sometimes Matt Dillon, with the exception of There's Something About Mary, plays a similar role in every movie. Kind of morose, I don't know, downtrodden, kind of sullen. How would you describe a typical Matt Dillon performance?
Okay. So like some of his characters have been really down, but on their luck, but for some reason you just never buy his character being down on his luck. He's just like morally gray. There we go, morally gray.
Morally gray, and he knows it too.
Yeah, wild things.
He's morally gray, and he knows it. He knows his own depravity.
There it is. I like that. Morally gray.
Oh, that's a good one.
I feel good about it. I could retire on that one.
Strong
Superb.
work.
Superb.
All right.
That was my one for every episode.
Superb times 10. Okay, so 2. What is your favorite movie about going home after a long time?
Jeez Louise. I mean, Grosse Point Blank is always a lot of fun because
yeah, it is.
That movie works for me because he's a hitman who comes back home. Like everyone thought he was dead. Everyone talks about it like 10 years. It's just, I dig that a lot. I think, his relationship with Minnie Driver, just meeting the parents, the high school reunion. They don't even spend time at the high school reunion. He just beats the heck out of his trainer and the real like Benny the Jet in that awesome fight. And he just sort of cruises around.
Yeah. It was such a wide gap between high school and where he was 10 years later. That's the funny part about it. Like how much he changed. He turned into a killer.
That's why it's fun, right? He's just totally different. I think Garden State's quite good too, but I like Garden State's more like a Wizard of Oz type thing where he just goes on an adventure like throughout the city of New Jersey.
Why are these movies so interesting about returning home after such a long period of time?
Like there's a good dynamic there already. So you either have the ex. I mean, think about Sweet Home Alabama. You have the ex. Right?
The history.
So you got highfalutin and city life in L.A., like in Garden State, and then highfalutin city life in New York, and you come home to Alabama, or you come home to Jersey, you come home to small town Massachusetts. So you have that conflict. The towns change, but you kind of there's already some conflict with other characters. They know you really well, but they know old you. So then it's really easy to explain the character. Hey man, remember 10 years ago when you pooped off the moon tower? Like, well, I'm a different guy now. Like, so you have.
I don't know if it's old you or if it's they know who you really are.
Yeah, maybe
at your core.
Yeah, they know who you really are. They've seen you at your worst, at your best. There is, and it's weird too, man. I mean, like we left our hometown, like where we grew up. So you come back and there's just, you do feel like an outsider. So you have that narrative already in there.
Yeah.
So I think narratively speaking, it's rich. It's full of storytelling possibilities that I think is good for writers. It's a good crutch.
Superb answer.
Yeah.
Third question. If you could recast Beautiful Girls in 2021, who would you cast?